What's up everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be getting ready for the Spring Break Bash event over in OSW. It's a 3-day event, kind of like Black Friday, and they're going to have the competition where you basically have to battle for the crown of King of OSW. So after Black Friday, I kind of realized how slow my car was, and I kind of started to make little changes to the car. So I started to drop more tire pressure. You know, I tried to straighten out the wheels, I added some toe, and it's not really there just yet. So I think what I have to do is possibly add softer spring rates. And when I went to go look at my spring rates, because I just kind of bought these coilovers off of a friend and just threw them on, the rear spring rate is at 10. It's 10K spring in the rear, and that is like super stiff. So that's why I'm able to go as low as I am right now and not really have to worry about the wheels squatting in and doing whatever. But it's also making me drive really slow in comparison to some of the cars that are showing up to OSW. So for me to be in a competitive position, for me to try and at least, you know, go for the top, I need to change those springs out. So I'm going to put in some, I think it's 4K or 5K springs in the back, and the front's going to stay the way it is. I'm going to kind of play with the suspension geometry. So I saw this on a YouTube video before, where basically on the S14, the traction arm kind of controls how your wheel is going to change its geometry or change its angles as it travels up and down. In other words, when your car squats, you can either get a lot of toe or a lot of camber, or you can make it so it's kind of linear, where it's going to travel up and down straight, not kind of in a weird angle. So once those springs come in, I'm going to disconnect the coilover and I'm going to run the wheel up and down and see if I can get the traction arm and everything to make the wheel travel as straight as possible. So that way when the car does squat now with the new springs in the back, which will at least let it compress some more, the wheels stay flat on the ground and it doesn't lose any sort of toe that needs to be there to get the grip to push forward. So this is 0 camber with I think 6 degrees of toe in. Jesus Christ, a bird, pterodactyl or something, crapped on my car. The car is on 10K springs right now, so that way it can sit the way it is and it really doesn't move too much once I'm drifting. So that's not going to be too good once the car does start squatting, because it's going to squat into the tires. So every time I go to start my car, the battery's dead. I just remembered something. So a few days ago, or not a few days ago, before the last drift event that I went to in Orlando, which I haven't made a video for yet, it kind of sucks because I didn't really make talking portions of it, and I've been trying to do this blogging thing, but it's kind of like, you know, you miss to film what you want to film, and then the video doesn't quite make sense, and then it's just driving. But I'm trying to do it different for this one. I know I said I'm going to do it different all the time. It's just hard to keep track of it when it's not really your daily routine. So after the Palm Beach event that I drove, I think it was the 15th of February, something like that. After that event, my alternator actually took a dump on me, and the voltage regulator wasn't regulating at all anymore, and it kind of overvolted my entire car because the main fuse was actually a nut. It's kind of stupid, I know. I just didn't have a replacement fuse at the time, so I just shoved that in there to make it work. And you know, that's on me. But I fried my window amp regulator. I have it somewhere. I fried my taillights, so that's going to be interesting. I'm going to have to open them up and see if I can actually change whatever is damaged in the circuitry. The brake lights work, but the running lights don't work, and as you know, running lights are pretty critical. The next thing is the fans don't shut off when the car turns off, and the electric water, my water sprayer for the radiator, no longer works. Spring Break Bash is going to be quite a demanding event for the car, so I need everything to be working in tip-top shape. So one of the things that I did was, for the last event, I just kept the fans running at all times. So the operating temperature would actually drop below what it's actually supposed to be. Oh God. So the bad part about that was the operating temperatures were so low because the fans wouldn't shut off. The car was actually getting too cold. So I had to, like, you know, mess with the car, you know, hold revs a little bit to try and get an operating temperature before I go for a run. It just wasn't really working out that great. So I'm gonna try and figure out the wiring for that, see if maybe something got messed up. And if that's not the case, then I'm kind of screwed. I think maybe the Haltech might be internally damaged. So with that being said, with my window amp being fried, I'm going to look at my other car and see if I have one, and I don't think I do. Ah, damn it. Yeah, the window amp got fried and it made sparks, and it was insane. And it freaked me out because I really didn't know what had happened. I'm probably not gonna find it. I was thinking maybe I can, like, steal it off of this car. This car's been sitting here for a long time. It's been years now. You can see how faded the blue is. This car used to be like a bright blue color, and now it's turned into almost a white. So this car was basically the car that I started to really get more aggressive with drifting and learning how to drive. And yeah, it's just been around for a while. So that car is basically notorious for its RB20. After my brother passed away, I put that RB20 in his car, which is over here now. And then the story continued from there, doing a lot of driving and everything. So damn, okay. So I don't know what to do anymore about the window amp. Basically what I have to do now is I have to use a drill motor battery to these wires that go directly to the window motor to run it up and down, because the window amp is bad. I can't run the windows up and down on the driver's side anymore. Life is great, you know. Okay, so I went and disconnected the single wire that runs to the ECU pin. I love this connector because it's so easy to unpin. Basically, you just have this little white tab. You're going to push it in with a flathead screwdriver. This side's going to come out a bit, and basically you can pull any one of these wires out from the ECU connector and reposition it as necessary. So we're going to run the test now with that connector disconnected, which is running to the thermo fan. We're going to connect this now and see if it's an internal issue. So it appears it is. The next check that I'm going to do is basically, once I reposition this, if the fan doesn't operate correctly, it might be an issue with this being grounded somewhere or something along those lines. So we're probably going to run this a continuity test to the ground and see if it does, and if it doesn't, then it's the ECU that is internally messed up. But luckily I have about 4 more outputs that I can play with. So yeah, this kind of sucks that it's this way, but whatever, we'll patch it for now and we'll get back on track. So I swapped the pin over to another connector, which is basically another one of the injector outputs. So we're gonna run the car now and see if once we hit the operating temperature that the fans will come on. If that's the case, that means there is an internal issue with the Haltech, and I'll probably leave it like that for now until there's a good downtime to pull the ECU out. Just gonna leave it now, let it get up to operating temperature, and hopefully the fans will kick on, because then that means I don't have to worry about that anymore at the track. So right now I'm changing the parameters at which the fan turns on. I want to see that the fan does turn on. Perfect. So the fan just turned on at 160, and that's perfect. So we're gonna turn it back up to 170, disable below 165. We're gonna apply that. It's perfect, perfect. Okay, so next thing is to swap the wire over for the water sprayer. So let's see, I'm gonna open the connector, pops open as easy as that. I'm gonna pull this blue wire out, which is wire 19. Trying to get a good hand on it without trying to pull the other wires out. That's what we're doing. Okay, radiator spray. A31 green. 34, 33, 32, 31. Okay, that's a little weird. Purple wire there right now. Whatever, we're gonna pull it and see what happens. We're continuing this video after you see the abrupt end there. What happened was I basically grabbed the wrong wire from the connector because, I don't know, something weird happened. I grabbed the wrong wire and I gave it ground. That wire that I grounded is the wire that runs to the injector number 1. So if you don't know, injectors run on 12 volt power. They take 12 volt from anywhere on the car and they get grounded through the ECU. So when you supply a constant ground, the injector turns on and will spray fuel if there's fuel pressure in the line. So with my key on, the fuel pump is going to start priming, but with the injector wide open, it's just going to start dumping fuel into the cylinder. So that means I was like this close to hydrolocking my engine, but luckily the rotation from the actual starter isn't enough to bend anything. But now for sure I need to change my oil before the event. So given that I'm going to change my oil, and given that I've kind of like changing my oil so often, I figured, you know, why not just go and try and get E85 set up for the car. So I actually went and bought from Amazon some Gates rubber fuel hose that goes in tank. So it's basically good for E85, it's good for alcohol, methanol, all that fuel. It could be submerged in it without any sort of problem. The problem with that is it's like $12 a foot, which isn't that bad, but if you go to like Napa Auto Parts, it's like $33 a foot. Actually, let me try and remember. It was $33 a foot, plus you have to buy like so many feet of it. So it's pretty ridiculous. So yeah, so I have to change my oil. I'm going to change the fuel lines inside of the tank. A friend of mine finally sent the springs over, so I'm going to try and change the springs tonight. So I'm gonna have a, I think 4,000 or 4K spring rate in the rear, and whatever spring rate I have in the front is gonna stay. So I'm gonna make a few changes to the trailer. I'm gonna try and actually install a winch soon, but it won't be for this event just yet, but I'll probably install it somewhere up front here, underneath there, so it's well hidden and no one really knows it's there. And I'll probably make a battery tray underneath everything once I take this wood off and replace it with new. These ramps, I always have to strap them to the front. So what I'm gonna do is actually stand them vertically here. They're gonna sandwich in between this gap here, and I'm gonna make a little, probably just a little piece of angle that sticks out, and then I can put a pin through it and keep the ramp safety to this actual structure compared to strapping it down to the front every time. That way it'll be a little bit easier. I don't have to run a strap. I just have to put the ramp in place and then pin it, and that's it. I want to make sure the rear lights are good. I just need to put one light in and ensure that the other two are working. So yeah, those are just some quick fixes I want to do before I head to the Spring Break Bash event. I've been really wanting to do the wood on the trailer, but it's been so hard to do because there is no time to do it. Just like every other week or every 2 weeks there's a drift event. So I've been like, oh, I'm gonna go drive that for the exposure. I'm gonna go drive this event because it looks fun. I'm gonna go do this and that and blah blah blah, and it just really doesn't work when you're trying to get stuff done to the trailer or little changes to the car. You know, you kind of like set off some stuff and just drive the event. Well, that's what's happening with the trailer. The car, I'm trying to get it as, you know, reliable as possible for this drift event. I want the E85 to try and keep my cylinder temperatures down and keep the car safe. I don't want to detonate. I don't want to do any of that bad stuff. Okay, so here's what I have so far for the ramps to be safety to the side of the actual tire rack. So what I'm going to be doing is replacing this self tapper. I just have it here now so I can work with everything. But I'm going to change this for a bolt and through bolt it through the actual ramp itself so it's more solid. This is here just for a quick release so I can actually take the ramp off with no problems. What I'm going to do on the bottom now is I'm going to put a 3-inch, basically 3/8 rod, so that way it kind of engages the ramp itself and it doesn't just rely on this portion here. So it'll have a 3-inch basically engagement on that 3/8 rod, and it won't be able to come out unless I remove that piece up there. So that will safety that together. Now it's just a matter of cutting everything, and then I'll have to do probably the right side tomorrow because it looks like it's about to rain and I have to hook up to move it and everything. So tomorrow will probably be the day that I do that side. But for tonight, I think I'm gonna go over to the shop and do everything on the car. As soon as UPS gets over here, I'll get all the parts ready and we'll get on our way over there soon. So we're at the shop now, and tomorrow is the day that we're gonna get tuned for E85. I got a little sample of E85 now. When I get home, I should have the little test kit, and basically the way that it works is it's a vial with this, like, some markings on it. You put some water and then you put the E85 in it, and it'll tell you how much ethanol it has in the actual fuel itself once the fuel settles and all that. Once I know that the quality is actually fairly decent at the gas station, I'm gonna pump a couple of jugs full, and then I'm going to put the car on the trailer and then drain the car of the fuel that it has on it. So that way when I get to the dyno, it's just E85 in there. We could pretty much just make sure that everything's good to go. In preparation for the dyno tomorrow, I'm changing my spark plugs from the typical NGK copper plugs to the NGK iridium plugs. These are 7s. My tuner recommended I run 7s, so they run a little bit cooler in the cylinder. Given that I beat the crap out of my car so much, I want to kind of keep the horsepower number low, but if I can touch 500, I'd like to do it and just dial it back from there, maybe to 450 or something along those lines, or maybe just keep it at 500 depending on how safe it is for the car. E85 is a lot safer to run than it is 93. 93, you have risk of detonation and risk of basically, anything that could go wrong with 93, while E85 is a bit more forgiving. So with the 93, I'm probably making about 400 wheel horsepower right now. I'm not 100% sure because the last time I was on the dyno, I made 450 and 500 torque at 24 psi. Right now I'm at 17 psi, but the main difference between then and now is that my turbo was absolutely shot. So massive shout out to Havoc Speed Shop for rebuilding my turbo. They did it sometime last year. I forget exactly when it was. My turbo was just gone. It was like compressor housing was just like nowhere to be found with tip to blade. Blade tip to compressor housing clearance was just massive. So the turbo wasn't efficient. So Anthony over at Havoc Speed Shop rebuilt it for me, and ever since then it's been doing awesome. So now at 17 psi, it feels like I'm making around the same power, but I might be making less. I'm forgetting what it felt like to have more power. But now with this turbo, the high compression pistons and everything, E85, I should be able to touch 500 horsepower. And maybe I'll just leave it there, because after you start to pass a certain threshold in horsepower, everything starts to break, and then it's no longer fun to drive anymore. I'm probably gonna touch 500 horsepower just to be in that club, because it sounds cool to say you have 500 horsepower, and then just leave it there. I'm not gonna go anymore. I don't need any more. The car drives awesome as it is, but I want the E85 to be basically an extra cushion for protection for the engine, so I'm not actually, risking the chance of detonating after doing hot laps or anything like that. So with E85, much safer. Hot lap all you want, and the temperatures will probably stay so much better. Okay, so I've made an absolute mess over here, but so far I think we're going pretty well. I adjusted the rear wheel on the left hand side because the arm, it's called the traction arm, that runs between the knuckle and the forward uppermost connection point. I adjusted that out because I realized that it was actually adjusted all the way in. So when I adjusted that out, some toe got added and some some camber got added. So I kind of took that back out to kind of have a good starting point for a full alignment now. So now the wheels are square. So from front to back, on the left and the right, they should be square. I kind of measured it the best I could. So then I raised the car a little bit on the back side and the front side, so that way I can get full kind of like suspension movement. I put the front as soft as I can. The rear is going to be changed at the track for the shock itself, but the dampeners are already at the lowest setting available. So now it's time to change the in-tank fuel lines. I have the, I'm trying to find them now. I have the Gates fuel hose. This is submersible. This is for E85, alcohol, all that good stuff. This won't get eaten up by the E85 and will prevent me from losing fuel pressure because, you know, the hose starts seeping and all that good stuff. So they're about $15 each on Amazon, and they're about $33 at the store. So definitely, if you can, order them through Amazon. They're 5/16 lines for the in-tank side. And yeah, so let's do this.